Was good, y'all. I'm here officially. A couple minutes late, but we made it. You did. So I am getting all my notes and stuff set up. Give me a couple minutes. I do think that on today I'm gonna bless y'all with a little theme music. Okay, while I wait on y'all to come in here. Okay, so a lot of y'all know, maybe a lot of you don't know. But I am an artist. Okay, I'm very sensitive about my. But actually, I've always been creating for a long time, and I am proud of the things I've been creating. And I just realized I am not on Instagram. So give me a couple minutes. Let me hop on here and make sure that we got the cameras going and flowing everywhere they need to be, um, so that nobody misses out on today. I know I'm committed to making sure that everybody's on here together. Look like ain't nobody tapped in yet, so I'm gonna just wait a second. The other thing I realized is I really probably picked a bad day to do this because the Super Bowl is on tonight. And while I do not watch TV majority of the time, if I'm not checking out some educational or series that I've been directed to or whatever, I don't really keep up with what's going on. And so somebody mentioned to me today, like, you can't be watching the Super Bowl and you can't have a Valentine. Totally forgot about both. When it comes to mainstream and pop culture, I am not an avid participant like most people. I've grown to the place where I have made a decision that I would like to institute my own culture that reflects my own values and my own ways that I would like to live. And so that's really what I spend most of my time doing. So I'm gonna actually just go ahead and go through the material, and hopefully, if you come on here, something will be said or done that'll make you want to like or share or tap in. But I'm gonna go ahead and give you this content either way, whether it's one of y'all or whether it's 1,000 of you, because I wholeheartedly believe that the consistency is what's gonna pay off. Let y'all watch y'all Super Bowl, and I'm going to still go in on the spirit of intimacy. So on yesterday, we talked about the ugly reality of everything that we are dealing with, like in terms of like what the reality is that we see in front of us uh, regarding relationships, whether we see them statistically as producing things that are useful for our community, institutionally. And we talked about how marriage is an institution. And while this class is not promoting marriage in any shape, form, or fashion for anybody, it is exploring what institutions that we have and are producing in our relationships that are allowing us the space and vehicles to be able to produce more power. And we went into the statistics and what they look like yesterday, um, as well as a little bit of history and the reality of where we sit right now. And people have a variety of opinions about whether they feel like we have made progress or whether they feel like we still have so far to go that we can't acknowledge the progress that we've made. But we got to make a decision whether we're going to stay here, whether we're going to continue to move. And so, in that decision making, we also talked about how to begin to move forward and shift our paradigm, and even what a paradigm is and how we get to having one of those to begin with, as well as how the spirit of intimacy as a book or a practical resource can be of assistance to us in that. And so, that's just a quick recap of yesterday. And today, we just gonna hop into it. I would like to take a second to introduce myself to you. I am Gianni Olamide, your spiritual plug, and I am here to prick your consciousness, to hold space for you, to be able to tell your truth, and to go dig deep into your reality, as well as to mirror yourself back to you. This is a space to heal, to stay facts, to speak the truth, address issues, to be vulnerable and be open. so that transformation might happen. That's the goal, is that as we learn together and we dig into this material, we are open to the information and what it can actually produce in us, not just for us to be able to um, consume and consume and consume and have no application or praxis about it. Um, but yeah, the point is so that your thoughts might be provoked, your consciousness pricked, as I said, and your own shadows reflected back. I run an organization called the Alternative Tribe, where our mission is to provide safe space for Black, Indigenous, and people of color to engage personal growth, cultural development, and community support by bringing together and ordering the resources that we already have amongst us. So if you've been looking for your tribe, I encourage you to subscribe to www.thealternativetribe.com. That is where you can keep up with all of the classes, all of the activities and stuff that we got for the community. I have been diligent about working with the youth, ages 12 to 17. Hopefully, before this year's up, we will have another group for a younger age group, because our kids are so critical to what's next for us. We talk about them as the future, but they growing up fast, and the future is now. 10 years from now, our 8-year-olds will be 18, and we got to figure out how we equipping them and empowering them to be able to have and do all the things that they need to be great. And so one thing about us at the tribe, our core values state that everybody who comes to the space got sacred word. No matter who you are in the body, no member reserves the right to be toxic to the rest of the body. And when we heal ourselves, we heal our community and our collective future. So that's what we're here to do. We are in the middle of a 3-day study on intimacy while we are in the love month. Okay, so this is February, where people celebrate Valentine's Day. It is also Black History Month. So what better way to merge the two together than to bring the knowledge of our elders and community as it relates to love and relationships and how we coexist together. So like I said, I'm gonna go ahead and get in and out your way. But y'all gonna get tired of seeing me. I really feel like we're gonna be locked in here long enough for y'all to be seeing me and be like, damn, she on here again? What's she talking about today? But yesterday we went into the introduction and the foreword of what the book talks about. And basically we talked about how the spirit of intimacy is a prescriptive remedy for reorienting ourselves into an understanding of being that's not rooted in Western Eurocentricity, or the problems that have resulted from slavery and colonization, rooted also in white supremacy. So when we look at that, then we starting the whole study of this book, understanding that the information that's being presented, one comes from the context of storytelling, where it is an oral offering that is giving us the details of how to engage in intimate relationships with each other, and not just in a romantic way, right? Intimacy is so much more than just romance. And we have diminished it down to that when all of our relationships contain it. And that is what the Elder Sobonfu Somé is offering to us, that we got to transition in the ways that we relate to each other, period. Whether we talking about our immediate and our nuclear family, whether we talking about our chosen family, whether we talking about our friends, our folk that we work with, just our people in general, she brings to us a traditional African context that comes out of West Africa, from the Dagara people who, across colonization, have ended up in Burkina Faso, Ghana, and there's another one. I think the Benin. But that came as a result of the French splitting them up, because they didn't recognize tribes as nations, right? So when we start there, recognizing that the very existence of how we have been broken up, spread out, We have come to know these lands that we live in, as they are all products of this Eurocentric influence that at some point we got to figure out how we are going to reclaim for the purpose and the sake of what we want to institute and share amongst our children, or we got to just, decide we're going to roll with it. And we talked a little bit about this yesterday when we addressed the problem of integration. But integration in and of itself wasn't a bad thing if we had already amassed some level of cultural understanding and commitment to each other that would have kept us from moving outside of ourselves, right? That would have kept us from desiring to not be who we are and to be somebody else in the process, and all that come back to is values. And we struggle as Black Americans in this country because to an extent, a lot of us feel like homeless orphans. If you look like me, then a lot of times you struggle with some of your native and indigenous brothers and sisters because Black has been problematic no matter where you come from, whether you're a Black Indian, whether you're a Black Spaniard, whether you a dark Asiatic, it doesn't matter. The darker you are, the more problematic your being has been historically, right? And so if you dark and considered indigenous to this land, if you haven't been able to trace and track it back to where it actually is, as well as to make some connection to your tribe here, you don't feel that connection. And if you know that your people were transported here, right, from the Western coast, and you don't have any connection to those people or to that land or those languages, there's also another disconnect that we feel. And so there is this point where we gotta get okay with making the decision about our identity and who we are going to be, who we want to be. Because, like I said, integration caused a real conundrum around that. In terms of we don't know what we want to be Black, we want to be Afro-American, African-American. We cool with just being niggas. We want to not be seen with color because some people prefer to be around people who are colorblind, even though that ain't even a real concept. When we know that when we come upon each other, we see each other. And so there's this other piece of this study that also presupposes that we are okay with embracing that Afro, and not even Afrocentric, but African-centered approach to relationships and to culture and to being. And so this study in the spirit of intimacy is rooted in the understanding that spirit has to be the driver of our relationships in order for them to be appropriately facilitated in how we step into them. Okay. Without that, ego, control, and a variety of other things, we are going to be battling in the process. And so as the book begins, I said yesterday we went through the foreword in terms of the value of what the book is able to provide. But she begins telling you about her people, who she is, where she come from, how they see relationships, what is culture. And for them, their value is in the land. They have an agricultural economy where they grow what they need in order to be able to sustain themselves and to survive. They don't have electricity. They don't have running water. She said they don't have no houses without no cockroaches. Okay. They don't have the modern American luxuries and amenities that have been afforded to us, but they live close to the earth and they live close to nature. And everything about how they have managed to engage life with each other is also in respect to the earth and to nature and to the elements that exist around them, including the way the village is facilitated. The trees, the rivers, everything is considered alive. And so for them, that also translates into communal living and respect. And respect. Here in America, we have so many privileges that there are so many things that we don't even think about, right? In terms of the earth and how we care for the earth and the ways that we approach um, making sure Mother Earth has what she needs, it really is of no consequence to us. Most of the time, we don't even think about it. I watch people move and walk up and down the streets, and they will consume something and throw the trash out the window or on the sidewalk or wherever they are, respectless that when it falls, it's falling onto Mother Earth. She is alive. And there are also things that she needs that we require to help take care of her. All the trash and shit that we put back into the land that then squeezes the oxygen or the life back out of what we have available to us. We don't think about our carbon footprint. We don't think about our ecological footprint in terms of consumption and materials or disposal, and all of these things she's affected by. And so they live, their land is a savanna, which is grassy, trees, mostly flatlands. A lot of their trees get over 30 feet tall. But when they grow food, they only grow what they need, what's needed for cooking and for cosmetic purposes. But they don't make enough food to export. So the way that we understand business and commodification and being able to earn revenue off the land and to transact with it as if it is not something that's sacred, right? Because capitalism has moved us into transactions with things and with people in ways that don't acknowledge the fullness of their value, okay? Which is why people was considered 3/5 of a person, okay? But recognizing this, that's subsistence farming, agrarian economy, and it's living off the land. Literally everything that you need, you have provided to you, and you ain't really got to go outside of there. They got rivers and creeks, and ponds that are generally the sources of their drinking water, right? So the way we understand running and flowing water and ready access, like you can go turn the faucet and it's gonna come on at any time. They don't live like that. They got to go get their water, and the water only flows in certain seasons, right? So when you're talking about a natural water flow, you got to get the getting when the getting is good. And so in the dry seasons, they use wells and well water. But with this well water, they have systems around how to be able to distribute it because it's a limited amount. And so when you have limited amounts, you got to make sure that you've ordered a way to make sure that there is enough for everybody. Now, their system is that families with children and elderly are served first, right? So if you got to go to the well and get water, and it's only certain periods of the day where the water begins to run that you can begin to access it, and it will dry up at a certain period, then that means you gotta be ready and waiting in order to be able to access that water when it starts running, right? So if you've been there and you've been waiting, and you're a single person, and there's a family with children that show up, and they show up before you, they get to go and get their water before you because it's children. You know what I'm saying? If it's somebody elderly, they get served before you. Why? Because there's a value there in the elder. If there's a pregnant lady, meaning that there's a child to be had, they get to go before you. And it's just about the value in the elders and the people that we have not learned in our Western culture, right? And so when I was little, my mama used to say, God protect babies and fools. And it took me, I can't even say I fully understand it now, but there is a responsibility upon us to care for those who cannot care for themselves. And that is how I see babies and elderly, right? So when we talk about our children and our youth as they are in the process of developing, as they are learning the tenets and the components of what it means to be healthy, to be whole, to have what you need, to be able to make decisions, to be able to have life skills and to know how to navigate this world, right? You got to get to a place where you're fully developed in that regard, okay? So yeah, we got to look out for the children until they can be able to take care of themselves in that way. But the elders have lived and have given in those ways. And so in their gifts. We should have some level of appreciation for what they've provided in ways that move us to provide back for them. My elders ain't gonna never have to worry about whether or not I show up and make sure they got what they need. Because over the course of my life, their wisdom, if nothing else, has provided and made sure that I had what I need, aside from all the other tangible gifts. Okay. And so there has to be a reciprocal value in the way that we see our people and the way that we care for each other. And if we're not invested in caring for one another, that it alludes to our own selfishness, which has been a major problem in relationships for a long time in our community. And we're going to talk about that. But they come back down to value. Come back down to value. Like I said, their value is in the land and in each other. And so the way we relate to money is not the same kind of barrier that they dealing with. They don't even deal with paper money unless they are considered business people who are actually engaged in the selling of goods or services. But that's the only way money is available to you. Otherwise, they barter and trade, or they use cowrie shells. And they these white shells, and they're considered of high value and of sacred worth over there, right? So if you really need something that's of value and you don't sell stuff in order to be able to receive money, you can take your cowrie shells, and that'll give you greater value on your bartering, on your trade. And so, because the land is seen as a spirit, you are in relationships with spirits. You don't use them. And they're moving away from that because the government has been commodifying the land, right? So all over, everywhere, country, land, it don't matter where you are, commodification has been happening, and monopoly. The monopolization of the land and who owns it and who has access to it and who can do what with it has been happening for a long time. And that's a game that a lot of our people don't want to play at all. And with good reason, because when you recognize that the earth is the spirit and the earth is alive, then there's too much reverence to treat it that way, right? And so it's a whole lot of things that they don't do over there. Like the way we do the census over here, they don't count people. They know each other. They know each other's name. They know who each other's people are. They know where they reside throughout the village, what gifts that they bring with them. Like there is a literal communal footprint where everybody is in connectivity. So I don't need to count you because I already know who you is and who your people is and where y'all at. You know, they don't have the modernization that we have in terms of streets. And I want to be clear that that when she's talking specifically about Burkina Faso, not to be generalized with the whole of Africa, which is a continent and not a country, right? Because when we talk about it, we homogenize Africa as if the whole continent is one place and it is a variety of places. But yeah, they are a little bit more I don't want to say rural, but a little less developed in that regard. So they don't have streets with names or that are paved. They got one main road that people frequent to get what they need. And they use that road to travel. They use that road to trade their goods. They got animals everywhere. Don't really have a whole lot of modern transportation. They do have buses that run kind of like public buses in our American context. But acknowledging that, you know, time is very different. Over here, we like to get things done chop. Hey, man, it's business. There's a certain way that things should be able to run with a certain speed and a certain efficiency. And they're not governed by those standards. In fact, you got to be patient because they ain't got to rush for nothing. I remember when I was in Jamaica, everything was slow. I'm like, my goodness, what it's taking everybody so long to do everything. And they're like, oh, you're on Jamaican time. But what I realized, Jamaican time and African time is really the same kind of time. And it's just that it's not monitored by what's happening on the clock. And it's not ruled by the linear nature of how other people engage it. And that's okay. No, ain't no hurrying. Ain't nobody in a rush to get nowhere or to do nothing. And that can serve us in a lot of ways, especially when we talk about the difference between being led and driven by moving in the spirit and doing the mundane back and forth day to day, what do I want to call it? The things that we have to do, the obligations that we're required to engage in to facilitate our survival out here in a capitalistic society. Those things don't facilitate us being able to sit and connect with our spirits. We start looking at the amount of time that we have to spend between working and taking care of ourselves. If you got kids, taking care of your kids. If you're married, making sure you include your spouse, and y'all got some time in there too. Like, there's so many different competing agencies for our time. And we got to be able to make sure that we have enough for ourselves and all our giving. Like, that's a real thing. But a part of our lack of understanding and our not being able to transition and facilitate what these things look like is also us looking for the leadership of where do we learn these things. When you start thinking about culture and what it is that culture requires of us, we got to be okay understanding that there are far more tenets of it than we have given the space to develop. And the development piece is on us, right? Like, we gotta get to the place where we take the time to learn the faculties that we actually need to be passing on. There was a time where church was the place that we would go to in order to get the values, the manners, the prescriptions around how we behave and how we show up in the world and the customs that we abide by. There was a time that the church was that place, but now we see the decline of people attending. And I don't know how effective some of our attendance was when we was going. That's a whole nother video. But because we don't have these esteemed places where community is being built, we are growing up in a vacuum. This generation, they individualism is so rampant, and it is not even their fault. It's our fault, because again, when I go back to the integrationist generation, that was the beginning of extreme individualism, right? Because now as we're trying to rise to meet the Joneses as they moving up to the east side, and we trying to do that, and we are trying to grow in our access, right? Because now we want the same things y'all got. We want our schools to look like y'all schools, our books to look like, we want all our shit to look like y'all's. But in the process of that, we gave up so many of the things that we had that were actually ours, fully owned and operated by us, in order to be able to share the things that they had. And this go back to value, right? This go back to culture, because when we moved into schools, integrating schools, and we moved into integrating churches, and we moved into integration, period, we lost control over our tangible assets and resources that gave us the ability to be able to transmit culture to our people that was completely ours. Like, we had schools that was all ours, and yeah, maybe the books was fucked up and they didn't have everything they needed in them, and the desks and shit might have been falling apart. But our teachers loved us. They were ours. They actually cared about the outcome of what came out. Not to mention, those Black teachers also had the ability to be able to transmit our stories, to be able to help us understand our history and who we are, the inherent nature of our value as Black people, aside from our colonization and oppression, right? Because in public school, they taught us a whole lot about who we are, but our history started as slavery, period. I remember having problems with teachers because my mom actually taught me when I was at home. Okay. Now, to a great extent, we have gotten to a place where our parents are not the teachers or not the primary teachers of our kids. Whoever their classroom teacher is their primary instructor. And it should never have been like that. What they do in public school or whatever educational establishment that is available as a product of our tax dollars and what we put back into government society was not ever supposed to be the final answer for our people in our education. Okay. And education has always been a hallmark and been something that is serious for our people to attain, because that has been the one thing that they have kept us from getting as a means to keeping us behind. So now when we got free and clear access to be able to study anything that we want to at any time that we want to, usually by whatever means we want to, because the World Wide Web is available to us and it is an encyclopedia that's in our hand at all times on these phones. Then now when we have the ability to be able to do the same things our ancestors got killed for, we don't even got time for it. We don't have the value in it. And so when we acknowledge that our values have shifted in that regard, that we don't even approach the same types of things that once led us into liberation, then the question becomes, is what do we call a new face of slavery? Because that's what we've walked into, is a new face of slavery, where the culture of comfort has moved us from actually paying attention and being mindful of what it is we put our time and energy into to access, to actually saying, I don't give a fuck about none of that. I don't want to do none of that. And I just ain't going to do nothing except whatever they tell me to. You know, I look at this whole pandemic and the coronavirus and the government and the CDC and all of this back and forth and double dutch and hopscotch about what's a prescriptive remedy and what folks should be doing and how they playing. Okay, because it's a real life experiment that we're in the middle of, and I hope that everybody is wise enough to recognize the experiment at hand and to govern yourself accordingly. Okay. Because at first they told us it was going to be 14 days before we could go outside. And then they said, oh, shit, y'all got to go to work. It's 5. But you know what? Do whatever you need to do. Because, you know, yeah. Like what? And everybody's waiting on these instructions, as if we do not have the faculties or capacities to be able to learn and discern and decide for ourselves, right? That is a willful choice that we make. And when we give away our power like that, we got to be real careful, right? Because what the media has done is use their power in order to facilitate whatever information they want. And then we get to decide how we're going to treat each other and move around that. You know, that there's a Netflix movie that I saw a couple weeks ago, like Don't Look Up or Don't Look Down. I think it's Don't Look Up. But it's a wonderful example, right? Where they show you exactly how all the stuff works. Even when you can know in and of yourself that you got everything that you need to have in order to be able to decide appropriately. And then somebody give you some information that'll make you think about it in a different way. And it might not even be what you had intended to think about. But we got to be mindful where we get our information from, who we listen to, what voices that we value, what places we extol and esteem, and whose voices that we're following, right? Because pop culture has been the leader of us. We haven't had no other culture. And I when I speak, okay, I don't walk around talking about Pan-Africanism. But you want to talk to me in terms of the values and the methods and manners of life by which I actually subscribe to. They are a cross between traditional African values and my traditional indigenous values, right? So there's this other thing where we got to acknowledge that we all mixed up at this point. We all mixed up. And Eurocentricity has provided us not only pop culture, but anything else antithetical to Blackness as a better option than what we know we are and have been, right? Because we're more than slavery. We've existed long before then. There's so much more than that. But if we do not take claim of that and uphold that and live into that, they're gonna continue to snatch away our history if we're not telling our own stories and we're not making sure that we are establishing our own culture and keeping it alive amongst our kids and teaching them how to navigate and maneuver it. It ain't nobody else's fault but ours if they ain't got it. That's this whole argument about the critical race theory, because we want somebody else to tell our stories. That is the argument. We want somebody else to tell our story. So now we're arguing about critical race theory, right? But if we was actually teaching our own kids, it wouldn't be no argument, because it don't matter what y'all teach in public school. We gonna make sure our kids know what they need to know, right? And if our adults are not studying and ensuring that they're knowledgeable in order to be able to transmit, where's the transmission happening? Like I said, church used to be the place where we would go and we would be empowered on every level, right? And when I say every level, I mean, you had churches that was functioning as financial institutions like banks. You had freedom schools that was running out of them, where folks was getting political education and they were actually learning how their systems and structures work. That way they could actually form a block to be a unified force against decisions that were happening governmentally against them, right? They sat and they organized in places that they had the ability to move freely, right? Because they had to have a strategy against the evil that wasn't sleeping. They have allowed us so many modern amenities that we can sit back at the house and watch the C-SPAN all day and know everything that's going on the political agenda, and we just ain't got time. It just doesn't fit in. Yet every day we're being affected by the decisions that are being made. And all of this results back to us wanting somebody else to govern our lives for us. Because if somebody else do it, then we don't got to be concerned with it. We can go take our ass to Miami or to Vegas or to wherever. And I ain't telling you don't go and don't live an abundant life. I ain't telling you not to go and see the world. I think that is one of the gravest errors of our people, is that we don't travel enough. Our world view is only 6 and 7 blocks long. We ain't never been nowhere outside of where we come from. So I am not advocating in any shape, form, or fashion that we don't travel and see the world. What I am saying is that there has to be a priority of purposefulness in everything we put our time and our energy and attention towards. And if we're not doing that, then what culture are we facilitating? Are we even aware, or are we moving mindlessly and aimlessly? And when we talk about culture, you know, their culture is facilitated through their leadership. And they have a distinct structure and distinct responsibilities over what the leaders in their community are supposed to provide. And it's not this this way of leadership that we know, where there's one figurehead who then disseminates the information to everybody else. Even here in America, we have an illusion of democracy. This is a republic. Okay, the shit that we're looking at is very oligarchical. You got a small group of people who are making the decision for the many, and even your democratic representation don't represent the whole. If it did, it would be more diverse to reflect the folk in society. You still got white folk making decisions for everybody. I don't give a fuck how you want to lay it out. You got white folks making decisions for everybody. And we cannot expect that white folk will concede their power. I just want to say that too. Power will never concede itself. Never. It's antithetical to maintaining itself. Concession don't even have a place there. But that also means that we got to figure out what leadership looks like amongst us. Okay? And we got to figure out what the standard for being a leader is, because we ain't on one accord about that either. You know, we police each other real hard. And we got a lot of calls about what's not possible and about what can't be. But the truth about it is that anything is possible. It may require sacrifice on our end, and we can't get around it. We don't have the luxury, right? The ability to do and not have to sacrifice or give up anything in the process is a privilege, okay? And maybe our comfort has confused us to thinking that we can't maintain it without behaving this way. But yeah, all we got to do is make a choice, and there's nothing more powerful than a made up mind. So when we start looking at leadership, structure, responsibility, what is the call of that? Um, they have a council of elders, and the elders make decisions, and it does not require them to have wealth and power to make those decisions. And in the Dagara understanding, power is something that's dangerous to have, because if it's not used correctly, people can be harmed. And if you care about your people and you know them and you are invested in them, you would never want to harm your people. A large reason that we are so okay with it is because we so disconnected from each other that a lot of times our actions affect other people are of no consequence to us because I don't know that motherfucker no way. Who is that anyway? Where you come from? Like that's how we approach and we treat each other, not with the understanding that everybody is my brother and everybody is my sister. And I honor you in this way. Anytime I see you, anytime I put my hand to something or I make a decision or something that may affect you, I am being conscientious of these things. And so ain't no one chief. And once we get to this understanding that there are ways that we can abide amongst one another that allows us to be able to distribute power in ways that serve us in the ways that we collectively move as a people, traditionally, then we can begin to, one, imagine what these things look like amongst us in a Western world context, right? Because we don't live in Africa. That's the other part. Like these are ways that have been shared with us that illuminate a more indigenous way that's truer to our nature, that must also be transplanted into a context that's not inherently ours, right? So now we're talking about how we create in the midst of things that have already been created, how we take the meat and spit out the bones, how we not throw out the baby with the bathwater. And so putting these things together, we understand that, the purpose of the elders is to handle the concerns of the village. And it ain't always easy finding elders because that ain't something that people want to do. It is not a coveted position. Your life really ain't yours no more once you begin to serve people in that way, right? So you don't get to choose when the problem happens. Essentially, they're a group of community pastors, I feel like, okay? Because who you going to call? And when folk go through stuff over here in our context, they usually get on the phone and they call whoever their faith or their spiritual leader is, their life coach now, or whoever the person is that provides direction. But it's an ongoing question of how do I find your therapist, like that's a thing. But where do we go in order to be able to get the direction in our lives around the culture that we engage in? And so the elders exist to be able to help facilitate that, and to be there for people. So they're accessible at all times of the day. But in order to be an elder, you must be initiated. Okay. And initiation is a process that qualifies you and trains you and equips you to be able to live into certain roles. Right. And so initiation is imminent in the Dagara culture at a variety of points in your life, but it starts at birth. The first ritual of initiation happens before the child even comes. And it continues all the way throughout the course of your life. And so when you understand that, you understand that there's also a continual evolution that's happening, right? Because that's what initiation is preparing you for what you're about to go into. And because we always developing at every junction and phase, all of it got a purpose, the elders help facilitate a specific order in the community. They don't have no police. So if it ain't no peace, or if there's a problem and stuff start to go wrong, We're not calling in no third parties. We're calling the elders so that we can resolve the conflict in the spirit of the tribal culture. And when I say culture, y'all, I don't use that term loosely, but I actually defer to Amos Wilson's definition of culture, which contains all of the components that you see on this diagram. For those of you on Instagram, that's language, communication, courtesies, rituals, roles, customs, relationships, practices, expected behaviors, values, thoughts, and manners of interacting. And so if we do not have a uniform ideal of what these things are for us as a people, the majority of us are figuring it out as we go. We're figuring it out as we go. And we don't have a rhyme or reason to what it is that we picked up and put on. And as we were talking about yesterday, a lot of us have paradigms that have been established that do not support us actually being able to grow into our best and wholest selves. Because a lot of times the paradigms that we have, we inherited, and the folk who gave them to us don't even know how they gave it to us. We just know that there has been a habitual understanding, frame of thought, or frame of reference that we have heard and internalized that has now become our own. And once we get old enough to recognize it, to recognize and to learn the processes of undoing and of redoing that we can heal within ourselves. But if there was an intentionality all the way from the cradle to the grave, the way we engage society and each other will move so much faster in terms of how productive we are in these purposes. We've been moving so mindlessly and aimlessly because this right here, culture, we don't have one of our own. We have not figured out. No, it ain't that we haven't figured out. We have not committed and submitted ourselves to the necessary learning that will allow us to employ our own culture outside of what Eurocentricity and white supremacy has provided us. I don't know that we want to be victims, and I'm not going to claim or declare that, but I'm sure going to say that we make it real hard on ourselves with this begging shit that we do from white folks. And I call it begging shit because I don't know what kind of acceptance that we want from them. I don't know what we want them to provide us, that we feel like we can't provide for ourselves, what we feel like they owe us, that we don't feel like we can go independently amass. But there has to be a restoration of traditional values with an infusion of imagination to innovate what's necessary for the times we live in now. We ain't never going to be able to go back. But as we look at going forward, there's a lot that's at hand for us to be able to connect with, right? And connection requires us to be still enough to reach out and touch it, whatever we connected to. And the elders have an understanding of that in the Dagara tribe. So when they go through their elder initiation, they showcase their understanding of the elemental forces, right? And when I say elemental forces, I mean of the universe. So that's earth, that's fire, water, mineral, and nature. And on that council, that's like a council within a council, right? So you got the overall council of elders, and then you also have a smaller council, right? An initiation council, and it's 10 of them, and it's 2 people for each element. It's a male and a female, and it's 5 elements, so that's 10 people. But these elements represent different things, right? And as I say, each of them have to be able to show their embodiment of understanding these elemental forces, right? So earth represents groundedness, our sense of identity, and our ability to support and nurture one another, right? So when you have specific problems that come up in these specific realms, right? There is a I don't want to say it a conquering of, but there's a foundational understanding that they have in these specific areas that help solve problems and get us back to our original divine connection. So the elders who represent the earth element help the people in the village stay grounded, maintain their sense of identity, maintain an ability to support and nurture one another, right? So earth people help make sure that we stay connected, that we stay grounded. We make sure that they make sure we move in our appropriate understanding of being. Then you've got water, which is to keep peace and to make sure our focus is on wisdom and reconciliation, meaning that we are staying in a spirit, in the right spirit, right? So one is about the right understanding. Earth is about the right understanding of our essence. Water is about maintaining the appropriate direction energetically, staying in a vibration that's going to facilitate intimacy and communal life, togetherness, these different things that we are discussing. Mineral helps to render our purpose and make sense out of what other people are saying. Discernment. Discernment. So we go from groundedness and understanding our essence and identity to also understanding vibration, to then making sure that we have discernment and the ability to be able to see what's there and not there, as well as to give what it is we're supposed to give, and to be able to discern what we're supposed to give, because that's also a thing. You can't give something that you don't even know you got to give. I mean, I imagine we got to start there. Fire. Fire is for dreaming, for keeping our connection to ourselves and to our ancestors while keeping our visions alive. I would akin that to passion, right? So staying grounded, knowing who we are, keeping our feet firmly planted, making sure we stay in the right vibration, making sure that we have adequate discernment for what we're dealing with and what we're offering and providing and prioritizing, making sure we stay passionate about those things. And then the last one is nature, which empowers us to be our true selves. And if you can't be your true self, you're going to struggle facing adversity, enduring changes as they come up, and experiencing the magic and laughter as it unfolds in front of you. There is a story, a movie called The Never Ending Story. And it was the job of the boy in the book to do this with nature. But nature makes us come face to face with our true nature, right? So if you can't conquer nature, you can't conquer you. And you can't conquer you if you can't see yourself as you are. And in our culture, in the Western world, we have been enculturated into not seeing who we are, into not acknowledging and being honest about that, because it ain't politically respectable. It ain't polite. It ain't it ain't showing us in our best light. You know, we posture over here. And anytime you posturing, you're not actually being. You're not, you're putting on. You're putting on and you're dressing up and you know, trying to be seen in a way that's what's the word when it's prefabricated? When somebody is already like put it together, when it's inauthentic, you know. And so we got to be okay with our nature. And the elders help make sure that the community is nurtured into these elements of the universe so that the people can continue to grow and develop into the essence of who they are and who they're supposed to be. Because when you walk in those gifts and you give those gifts also edify the village and the people that are within it. When everybody is invested in each other, it's a completely different way of life. And amongst them, the family is one big family. You know, like the way we talk about family ain't the same way they talk about family. You know, we got over here, we got one mother and one father, and they are the ones who are responsible for the children. But over there, your auntie, your mama, just like your mama, and your uncle is your daddy, like your daddy is your daddy. Your cousins are your sisters and brothers, just like your regular sisters and brothers are your sisters and brothers. Like they don't make the same distinctions that we make. You know, your sister's husband is your husband. Your brother's wife is your wife. Everybody belong to everybody. How different is that than the possessive relationships that we have over here in the Western world? You know, at night when people are all considered to be a part of the same family, then they sleep in the same quarters. The men sleep on one side and the women sleep on the other side, and the children can sleep wherever they want to until they grow into their adolescence, right? Because at adolescence you start to develop, and then you are not looked at as a child in the same way that you were before. Which is also very different for us over here in the Western world, because adolescence don't really mean shit over here. It's the number 18 that makes the difference. And even though you start developmentally shifting and changing with your body, um, it's not really acknowledged until after you graduated high school, which that's a whole nother conversation too, because I don't know if it takes until you 18 years old to learn the shit that they teach you between kindergarten and grade 12. And we have evidence of that with other curriculums that have been created and are considered to be more African centered and for our people. But yeah, the kids can sleep wherever they want to, and nobody is offended. The parents are not offended by this, and nobody else is either, because want to give the parents a break because they have support from everybody else that's around. But it also gives the child the opportunity to make a decision about where they want to be. You know, what person that they feel drawn to. You know, she talks about in the book how sometimes she would have a different mom and daddy every day of the week, just because she had that many people in her village that were open and that were accessible to her, that she was able to go and commune with and be around. And whoever she wanted to be with for that day, it was okay. And nobody felt any kind of way about it. You know, and when we talk about the concept of the village here, I imagine that's what we imagine. In my mind, I know I imagine that one day for my own kids, you know, where I got enough land, or me and my people got enough land for us all to be able to reside and to coexist together, where we all care for one another. I care about your family the same way you care about mine, and everybody else around here. And we so invested in each other's lives and what we're producing here and what we're creating, that I ain't gonna let nothing happen to you. Because if something happened to you, then I'm affected by that shit too. And I don't want nothing to happen to either of us. You know what I'm saying? I'm invested in the preservation of all of our lives. That's a choice. And that is a place that we got to get to being willing to make as a people. How do I choose who my people and who ain't? Is everybody my people? Is it requirements for people to be my people? And if so, what are they? You know, um, yeah, that's a real thing. Patience is like I was talking about earlier. Patience is a must over there. They don't understand the meaning of hurry up and go. Okay, they don't they don't move the way we move. Being able to slow down and commune with nature uh, is directly connected to being connected to spirit. And that is something that they believe strongly and heavily in. So much so that education is frowned upon in many ways. Um, Matter of fact, education and mass media, because they feel that it removes people from being able to be connected to their spirit. And oftentimes the education that they learn removes appreciation for who folks inherently are when they come from the village. Okay. And so she talks in the book about how when the first Daguerre people went to study in the city, they felt the effects of the French colonizers and came back ashamed. They came back home ashamed, or they didn't come back at all. because of how they now viewed where they came from. And yeah, they've been disconnected to spirit by virtue of their intellectualism. And that is the warning that they provide us in their view. You know, connecting with spirit is an intuitive matter. A lot of times we feel like when we learn about spirit or when we learn about the components that make up religion, that it is the exact same thing as engaging in the practice of those things. And it's not. It don't matter what you know about the great beyond, the most high, the universe, the creator, however you would like to regard the one. No matter what you know about the most high, what you practice in your life, your spiritual engagement, your spiritual, I don't even want to call it an odor, but your spiritual attire cannot be faked. Okay? It ain't no knockoff Louis version of being spiritually astute. You either are or you are not. You either do engage in spiritual praxis or you do not. And even if you engage in spiritual praxis, you either do so with an understanding of the divine universal laws that are connected to what you are able to produce in that engagement, or you don't. And I say that because the fruit of our lives is going to bear testament to whatever tree you've been out there shaking. Our lives do not lie. So if you say that you believe and you are connected to spirit and you are in relationship to the divine that is within you and understand how to move and navigate that divine presence within you, no matter where you are or what you are dealing with, that should be evident based on the products of what you do have and are able to move and how you're able to navigate. If you ain't actually out here doing that shit, that's gonna be evident too. Just because you can pontificate about some things doesn't mean that you have intimate knowledge of their inner workings. And we need to learn that. We need to learn that because, you know, the cabin been at an all-time high lately. And, I know people reading a lot of books and shit, and I encourage and I employ us to continue doing that. But if we are learning for ourselves to become unteachable to and by others, we ain't even using it for the purpose that it is designed for, which is to help us engage in our own expansion and of the others who are around us. But it also requires us in our learning to still be connected to spirit. What she talks about in the book is how a lot of times when folk go learn, they don't have no use for spirit no more until something go wrong. Okay. Because they done figured everything out for themselves. And that's the issue. When we learn, we do so that we can become experts, right? So that nobody knows more than we do. So that can't nobody tell us nothing. But how do we learn if can't nobody tell us nothing? Because the truth of the matter is, any two ways we sit and learning, we sit and reading somebody else shit in order to say that we know something. Until we actually start going and running experiments for ourselves and putting our scientific experiments into codified learnings to say, this was my problem, this was my hypothesis, this was the experiment that I ran, here's the research that I did before I ran that experiment, here was the procedure that I did to run that, and here were the results that came from this, and here's now my confounding conclusion. All that shit they taught us in elementary had a place, but we left it back there. We ain't even using it to apply in the places and spaces that it can benefit our lives anymore. And it's my resolution that we got to be applying this to everything, because all of this goes back to us understanding what's happening in the spirit, because we're spiritual beings. We are, whether we want to be or not, you know? And when we start talking about intimacy and understanding what intimacy is, that is a spiritual thing. In general, intimacy is a song of spirit that invites two people to come together and share in their spirit together, right? So We ain't even getting intimate if we're not bringing our spirits to the forefront. This go back to how we facilitate authentic and genuine relationships. We meet people so often and we have such generic interactions that it really is hard for us to determine when somebody being real with us and when they're not. And I also want to say that if I've said anything good to you and you feel like somebody else need to hear this, by all means, please do hit the share button, hit the like button, make sure y'all beam me up, okay? Also, if I've said something over the course of this live that you felt like was good and it was worth a blessing, don't hesitate to bless your girl, okay? Cash app your spiritual plug, okay? Put the dollar sign first, make sure it go through. But yeah, want to also let you know that right there too. You never had to be shy about that. But yeah, when we start talking about being intimate with people, whether we talking about our family, whether we talking about friends, whether we talking about romantic interests, whether we talking about folk we do business with, intimacy requires a bearing of our spirits because that's what the purpose is, right? So we got to start by understanding that every relationship has a spiritual dimension, whether we acknowledge it as that or not. Okay. When we feel a call to go meet somebody or to say hello, a lot of times ain't none of that stuff by accident. It's all divine. It is all divine. Sacred contracts we have with people to help us learn specific lessons in this life that we agreed and contracted to come here and learn before we even got in these bodies. Before we even got in these bodies. I always like to this book right here, Sacred Contracts by Carolyn Myers. She does a great job going into detail about the nature of these agreements that we make before we come back. And the more we understand the nature of these agreements that we make, the better we will engage in our relationships, right? A lot of times the relationships that we have with our nuclear family are directly connected to major lessons in our numerological report. You know, astrology, numerology. We we talk about these things a lot, but sometimes I wonder if we know that these are actual spiritual systems that we are all connected to in terms of how we came back to be with the earth. Now, we all have our own Akashic records and star families that we belong to. From hence we have come, and to hence we shall return. Okay? That we got on these bodies here. But the actual goal is to go back and take on our celestial bodies. The same way you go outside and you look up and you see the stars in the sky and they be shining, we be shining and get you one shot. Don't you miss it. But yeah, that's the goal, right? So we talk about heaven, we talk about hell, we talk about all these things. All of these things exist right here and right now. But in this realm, Earth is training camp. This is training ground. This is where we come and we get our shit together. Okay? You ain't figured it out yet? I hope you just got the message. This is a training ground. The third dimension is not harmonic. But what it is that we learn here is how to exist in inner harmony in the midst of the outer chaos. And so above and so below. If we learn to be able to get to an inner harmony in and amongst ourselves and our spirits, then what we produce out in the world will also reflect that. It's reflecting all the shit that's happening inside of us, the turmoil, the up and down, the chaos, the things that we haven't figured out how to place or to manage, the paradigms that we've been practicing that we have not put into their appropriate containers, that we have not reprogrammed, right? The programs that somebody else set in us and started running when we came out the womb, that we have not stopped and started running another program behind. And so when we get to a understanding on that, then we realize we the programmers. At this point, we got to redo the program. And if we don't redo the program, then whatever one we've been given is the one that's going to keep running on autopilot for the rest of our lives. And if it does that, then did we get to learning the lessons that we needed to learn? Did we walk into every relationship with the understanding that there is a purpose here that spirit wants me to be able to engage and indulge in? And if I do so with the openness of wherever it's trying to take me, I will expand in and of myself. And the way I deal with whomever in my experience and my reality is going to expand and shift too, because now there's more to me. You know, when we talk about spirit, we are talking about the life force that exists in everything, right? This is just a body without my spirit animating it, making it come alive. This is the energetic essence of who I am that's going to always be. When my spirit leaves this body, it's going to transition, and it's going to go wherever it's going. It's going to continue to maintain its consciousness. And as it does that, it's going to continue to commune with the great one and make its way to whatever its next body is, for whatever purpose it came for, right? Because if I'm continually expanding, continually learning, continually growing, continuing to live into the great reason of being that I am here, because all of us are parts of the whole, right? So we're talking about there is one great beyond, one creator, one most high, one deliverer of this universe, one. And we're all expressions of that one in our very differences. If the divine lives within us all, now we're having a serious metaphysical and theological conversation about the essence of who we are. And there is a duality that exists, y'all. We human and divine at the same time. We both spirit and flesh. That's what these material bodies are. Our bodies are nothing but energy moving at rapid speed. You feel me? The spirit is what's holding us together. It's crazy. They even got studies about how when people die, you know, after they on the table and they do the body measurements of these people that, you know, there's like a extra piece of ounce or something that's no longer there from the spirit. It actually got a weight. It's a mass. It got a mass attached to it, you know? And so we have to get to a place where we can honor this in all things, right? Not just in humans. You know, when I started talking about these contracts and what we're here to do, you know, because we're spirit, each of us got to acknowledge that we made a choice to come be in this body. We made a choice to come carry out a specific purpose or to learn a specific lesson or to do something in particular in this third dimension. Seriously. And when we acknowledge that in the spirit, then we can see our connections with other people through that lens. And then it becomes a lot clearer what it is we have met or come into contact with them for. What's my purpose for meeting you? What are we supposed to do together? And when we start the conversation there in our relationships, it goes a completely different way. Spirit is the energy that helps us to connect and see beyond our limited parameters and connect with our ancestors too. But before we get into the piece about connecting with ancestors, you know, the energy that helps us to connect and see beyond our limited parameters, a lot of times if we are not consciously engaging in our spirit, are only limited to what we see in the flesh. And when we acknowledge that limitation right there, then what the spirit provides us is something that we cannot do without an active connection. You know, spirit can navigate seen and unseen, ancestors too, right? So when we start talking about connecting with ancestors, we're talking about connecting with more spirits. Ancestors have the ability to be able to see in the invisible spirit world and in our tangible third dimension world. They can see the future, the past, the present. They can see cross-dimensionally. They can see above, below, all that in many different ways and directions, which is a benefit to us, right? It's a benefit to us because when we are connected, it means we also have access to these things, even when we can't do them ourselves. You know, the life force in us and around us that's helping us to do what it is that we came to do. All of that helps to empower us and empower our purposes. The other thing that's important for us to recognize is that, you know, ancestors are here to help us. They are able to aid us in ways that we can't aid ourselves. Um, and just to acknowledge that, their experience ain't ours. They can they can stand in the gap. That's what I'm gonna say. They can stand in the gap. So how do we make these connections? Right? How do we go in and be able to commune? And there are different ways to be able to do that. Prayers, walking in nature, connecting with the elements, taking time away from the everyday and the mundane to be able to hear what's being given to us from the spirit world, from natural beings, from the intuitive side of us. That's an intentional endeavor. But without taking the time to do those things and being intentional about connecting the spirit, we are like the walking dead. Rituals help us with that though, right? So rituals help us not only heal wounds, but they help us listen. They help us to create the space for this communion. And so when we start talking about connecting to the spirit of the ancestors, we understand that there's a variety of ancestors. It's a pool of them. It's a bunch of them up there, okay? And all of them ain't ours. Let's talk about, first of all, that all of us don't even know all our ancestors. A lot of times we be talking about calling our ancestors and we don't even know who our grandmas and great grandmas and papas is, okay? I think we should start there. So when we are connecting with spirit and we are communing and calling for ancestors to come and to aid us, and we are attracting a variety of spirits in the midst of that, be specific about who you calling as best as you can. And in the book she gives you prescriptions on how to do that. Maybe saying things like, I'm calling out to my ancestors, the ones that I know and I don't know, but that are connected to me. I'm calling to my ancestors, the ones that I may or may not know, but the ones who know me better than I know myself. I'm calling that, you know what I'm saying? Make sure they connected to you, so that you are not calling for a variety of spirits and you don't know how they are going to show up for you. But ritual is super important in that. Grief and processing grief is considered a ritual in the Dagara way. And it's considered a way for us to bridge a gap between ourselves and our ancestors. Oftentimes releasing the anger or the sadness or bitterness that ancestors may have had from their life that has kept them from being able to transition over. In these rituals, we can help them to be able to process this and help carry them over into the land where the other ancestors reside, where they can help us, where they can be of use. But yeah, a lot of that is about us making the space, to be able to commune in that way. And so communing with the spirit is a part of intimacy at the deepest level. And when we think about our relationships with other people, intimacy is when two people can commune in the spirit and share without the mind interfering. A lot of times we will, when you're dating somebody, they be talking about going with the flow. A lot of times that's where it started at, going with the flow. And nothing wrong with going with the flow when it flows, okay? But the flow should always lead you to more than just physical engagement. It should be more than lust. When two people can commune in the spirit, it's a literal ping pong of positive energy, positive, pure vibration, where you just building. And the ping pong is of expansion. And it happens organically. And it continues to unfold more and more in different ways. But in this regard, people get bonded in sincere ways that allow them to move in love with each other. And that's the product of intimacy. But you can't do that when you got guards up, and you can't be real with people, and you can't acknowledge your traumas and your truths about how you got the way that you are. Spirit is important, because when you don't have it in the midst of your relationships, ego and control are bound to creep in. Okay. And once ego takes over, yeah, it's really hard to come back from there, because it has its own agenda and it's selfish. The ego ain't got no choice but to be selfish. Okay. Not because anything is inherently wrong with that, but oftentimes that's how we make sure that we get what it is we need. It's through our ego making sure that it secures that for us. It has a personal purpose to help ensure our well-being, whether we see it like that or not. But it got to be tamed in such a way that it doesn't harm more than it does good or fulfill that purpose. And so the way that we engage that is going to be based on the way we were programmed, okay? Based on that childhood experience and what it produced in our understanding of how to engage and be in relationships. And you can't have a spiritual connection with somebody who it does not have the capacity to engage in that, the capacity or the desire, right? And I say capacity because there are sometimes that we find people who have energetic holes in them from their childhood that has completely cut them off from their true selves, hoping that in their connectivity to other people, somebody else can fulfill that for them, right? She talks about how when people have sexual relationships only, oftentimes it's two people that have cut themselves off from they true nature and have energetic voids within them that they are seeking to fill within each other, or have basically written it off as not a necessitated value and are just moving outside of it. Like at this point, I know I ain't whole. I know I ain't got everything I need, and I ain't even finna try to find that shit no more. I'm gonna just do what I can do. I'm gonna fuck what I can fuck, get what I can get. And I'm gonna keep it moving out here. And you find there are a lot of people like that. And they go from person to person, siphoning energy, being vampires, trying to get full because they have not centered themselves in a way that allows them to find or know their purpose or move in that in their relationship with themselves or with other people. You can't never expect somebody to give something to you that they ain't managed to give to themselves, which is why I said our lives don't lie. All you got to do is sit back long enough and watch the way a person engages themselves and they own business, and you'll know what it is they're going to be likely to produce, the fruit of what you are seeing in front of you. A lot of time we got so much hope and faith in people, we be wanting them to be stuff for us that they ain't never had an example of being. We never seen them be or do. We just be hoping. And sometimes we'll see people do and be things, and we'll think that's who they are because we saw a glimpse of it. But that's not the normal practice. That is the politically respectable thing to do or be. So I am going to posture for you long enough for you to feel like this is who I am. And then for long, I creep out on you. You'll see me. You see me for it's over. Happens every day, baby. But that's where discernment comes in, and our ability to be able to understand the element of mineral and how to be able to know what it is you're seeing in front of you and to discern effectively and accordingly. And so when we have not dealt with the energetic holes that have been caused by childhood trauma, then we also don't have the cognitive faculties to be able to recognize where somebody else is in their process. Our ability to be able to relate and to recognize is inherently dependent upon what we're doing for ourselves. And so we got to be the ones that are committed to that, because again, control and ego have no place in the spirit. And so in order to make sure that we are not leaving space for it to take over, we got to continually be inviting the spirit into our interactions. That's an active task. You can't get around it. Even if you don't know what you're doing, you can say, "Hey, spirit, I got this thing happening. I don't really know what I'm doing, but I need you to guide me. Reveal to me the instructions or the method or the manner by which I need to be approaching this because I'm confused. I don't even know where to start." Kid you not, you'll be on your way. And then the answer will come. And you'll be like, where'd it come from? Oh, all right. But you also got to engage your spirit long enough to know when it's speaking to you, right? Because again, when you call on spirits, you can also have a variety to come and answer you. So you got to know when it's the divine part of you that's giving you a answer to the question that you have sought, or if it's another spirit. I think Mulan does a very good job showcasing sometimes how spirits, or illustrating, not showcasing, illustrating how spirits may convene and commune around our affairs in daily life. Okay. I don't know if you know, but her little council of elders, they was getting into it about what to tell her to do. Especially when she was decided she was gonna like the boy, they was like, "Oh, she ought to do this and she ought to do that." And then you got another one like, "Oh no, she ain't got time for that. She don't need to be doing," like, straight up arguing. Whole little council. I imagine that's what it sounds like in some of y'all heads sometimes. And that's okay. It's okay. All I'm saying is know who in the council is saying what well enough to know when that voice need to be heard, or whether you need to silence that voice and ask another one to come forward, to know whether that's you speaking, know whether that's your inner critic speaking, or that's an inner critic you've inherited from somebody that's speaking, or know whether it's your higher self that's coming to give you direction. And if you're not engaging yourself on that level at a high enough frequency, you're going to struggle in that regard. So all I'm saying is this helps us with our discernment, especially when we meet people, when we acknowledge that our relationships are spirit-based, and that they're necessary for us to have. Relationships are important. All of us have them, need them, and cannot get around them. The question is how we going to engage them. Which approach are we going to take with them, and what does that look like? And so when we acknowledge that our relationships are spirit-based, and we also acknowledge that when we don't have relationships or don't have healthy relationships, it creates a void in us, a longing, a desiring, a seeking of being able to figure out where to have that need met, and it creates a longing for another person. And it's just our desire to be connected to somebody. Now, oftentimes in our cultural context now, we assume that means we need somebody to date. We need somebody to lay up with. I need somebody to kick it with. That's the only way, for the most part, that we translate that into. And romance is now the way that we find the connections that lead us back to spirit. But the truth of the matter is we could actually help ourselves by approaching whatever relationship that we're interested in pursuing, whether it be friends, whether it be business, whether it be romance, whether it just be recreational, whatever the case may be, by asking what is the purpose of this, and bringing the spirit into that relationship instead of trying to make it romantic. Like that's some real Western world shit. We make everything about that. Dating is one of the hottest topics that people are looking up on the internet. Self-help dating books and how to get a man and all that. That's how Steve Harvey got rich off that damn book. Everybody trying to figure out how to find somebody to be with. And I ain't gonna tell you that it's wrong for you to want to be with somebody. But what I'm saying is, more often than not, your desire to be with somebody else or to be able to have that connection is directly connected to you being able to have access to spirit in another person. And that's okay. That's a part of our human nature. But name it as that. so that you're not out here looking for shit that you don't really want or need. Name it as that. And if you need to name it and say, you know, I got an itch and I just need my itch scratched, I didn't figure out how to connect to all the other spiritual and wonderful things in my life. I think it's okay to be able to acknowledge that too, because as we grow in our evolution of ourselves and of our self-awareness and how we relate to ourselves and each other, I also think we can articulate when that's our truth and when it's not. But that means that we didn't been down with ourselves long enough to know the difference. And so when we come together with people, create a spirit of intimacy. And it doesn't matter what kind of relationship it is that we are engaging in. You know, when two people come together, they create a spirit of intimacy between them through interaction, right? So the way I talk to you and the way you talk to me is going to facilitate how intimate I can be with you, how vulnerable I can be, how much I can share, how deep can I go, what level of trust gets facilitated here. And once you establish that, it has to be nurtured and kept alive. And that's what intimacy is. It's a barometer to read the temperature, to tell us where are we. If I feel like I can be intimate with you without second guessing it, without thinking about it, without any frame, a rhyme or reason, we didn't facilitate a good spirit of intimacy amongst us. If I got reservations, if I got hesitations and I got things that make me feel like this may not necessarily be a safe space, we might have some work to do regarding the spirit of intimacy that exists between us. But if the spirit of intimacy dies, the relationship is going to die too, which a lot of times is what happens in romantic relationships. You know, when you're not dating, when you date to get somebody and then you get them and then you stop all the things that got you to that place and then wonder why the relationship ain't still working, it's because the nurturing is no longer present. It's like a flower or a plant. You know, you plant the seed and you water it and you give it sunlight every day consistently, because that's what it takes in order for it to keep growing. And in our relationships, it's the exact same thing. We got to continue to water and to give light and to nurture the seeds that we have planted with our partners, right? And when I say partners, I'm not just talking romantic. I'm talking about all our partners, our business partners, our romance partners, our friendship partners, our life partners, whoever you done decided you're going to do life with. We got to nurture all of those relationships, even friendships, because as we grow with people, your interests might change. The things that brought you together as a friendship may shift a little bit. The things that interest, all of those things either can keep us coming together or can move us apart. Sometimes we meet people at specific places in our lives. And when we exit that season of our life, we no longer have those things in common with people. And then we don't have nothing else to talk about. Sometimes when we've been growing and the people that are in our lives haven't been growing at the same rate, we lose our connectivity to be able to relate to one another. There are a variety of reasons, but we see it happen every day amongst us. And it is really a decision that we make on our parts around how we want to continue to move around these things, And so when we recognize the importance of this spirit, ritual has a place in being able to help facilitate this nurturing and this aliveness, right? And there's a ritual that she talks about that the Dagara do every year to help amend what has happened to the spirit in its relationships and to bring it back to life, especially if there's been disconnection. And they call it the bringing of two souls together. And they do it through sacrifice. Now, we don't talk about sacrifice a lot over here because it has been given a negative connotation in the West, but everything actually requires sacrifice. Maybe not in the sense of slaying an animal, but in regards of effort and of releasing. We are always required to release something for that which we hope to attain. It's a law of exchange. Don't happen, things don't happen without it, you know. Even if a gift is given to you, it's paid for somewhere else. And that's a whole nother video. But we've got to grow in our concept of sacrifice and expand it beyond um I think what I would like to say is what we have been conditioned to believe it is, to a real learning and understanding of it. The other thing is that our children have to be oriented into how to be in relationships. And a lot of times we have practiced in our culture and community this do as I say, not as I do, to the point that our kids don't even listen to us about relationships. You know, they hear us tell them, you know, how to behave and to govern themselves in order to produce specific things. And then they watch us to see whether or not we abide by the things that we tell them. And every time that we don't, we become less and less credible, and our influence diminishes that much more. You know, children have to understand what the spirit is, okay? And they got to understand that that's what they are as young as possible, because if not, they will be disconnected from their spirit before they know it and have to figure out how to get back later on in life. And that's what has happened to so many adults thus far. I'm 33 years old, you know, but I can't tell you that I didn't go through this whole thing in my own life as an adolescent. Did and had to find out how to reconnect, and then went down the wrong path of reconnection because I followed what I had inherited. But what I'll say is, in following the inheritance, which Abraham Hicks would call the path of least resistance, you will also find your way back to the path you're supposed to be on, that you agreed to come back for in your soul's purpose. And so, you know, it comes down to us being diligent around what it is we're doing. And so when we start there, you know, we get some different things. Community is very important in helping us facilitate our understanding of this. You know, how we engage community, knowing what community is, all of that is pertinent for our yielding to it. And we don't know where to find community at. That's what I said. We have struggled for a little while trying to figure out where to find our tribe, where to find our people, where everybody at, you know. And as people, we need that. We need to know where we can go to find who and what we need. Community is a spirit of guiding light where people have come together to fulfill a specific purpose that's also going to help other people fulfill a specific purpose, right? So this is extension work, right? So we're going to come together so that we can do something that's going to help somebody else do something. And those are the gifts they keep on giving. We talked about yesterday, the law of giving, and how the more you give, the more you receive, and the more you receive, and the more you give, and it just keeps on giving back to itself and back to each other. But community is supposed to be that figure eight of infinite life and giving, life and life giving. You know, it's to be a guiding light. That's it. To be a guiding light so that we can do that work. And the goal of us being able to do that work is to make sure that each person in the community or the village is heard, to make sure that they have a place to belong, and to properly share their gifts within the world. Now, because we've been struggling with community and folk being able to have that place, we have also been struggling with seeing this goal realized, with folk having a place to be heard and to share their voice, with being able to belong and have a place to be able to share their gifts. Now we got a problem with everything. We don't want to hear you because y'all got too much shit to say. You don't have nowhere to belong because this is what's wrong with you. And if you fix this about you, then these people can accept you. And yes, you have great gifts, but give them over there because we can only accept these kinds of gifts over here. Like we work so much against ourselves when everything that we need is amongst us and upon us. And a lot of times we'll ask for shit and the great one will deliver it just like that. And we'll be like, oh no, that ain't that wasn't one for me. That was somebody else. The Lord knows if I'm gonna get it, it needs to have X, Y, and Z. So, and then the Lord be like, yeah, that ain't what you asked for. I gave you what the fuck you asked for, man. Come on now, work with me here. But that's our own selfishness, you know. When we are invested in each other, we have a different approach to the way we treat each other and the way we treat life. You know, the gifts that each of us have, all of us got something to give. Let's start there. All of us got something to give. And all of us have a desire to be able to give that in places and spaces where it can be received. Think about little kids, man. They're always bringing you stuff. They making stuff, but they want to show you something, or they want to do something for you. Hey, look at this dance I made up. Hey, look at this picture I drew. Hey, look at me. Hey, be like, understand it in the nature of the kids. This is the essence of what it is that is really upon us. They just want somewhere to give. Somebody to say, oh, baby, that is so beautiful. You did such a good job. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for thinking of me. That's all our kids be wanting. They be trying to rush and give us their time and energy. They be trying to give everything they got to us. Little offers. They go in the kitchen and cook shit. They don't even know what they put together, but they was thinking of us. It was so pure-hearted and so well-intentioned and thought out. It just wasn't aware of how to have all of the components to perfect it. But it was a gift nonetheless. And we got to stop squandering the gifts that have been bestowed at our feet and wondering why they stopped giving them to us. We've also got to stop treating them like there's something wrong with them for bringing us these gifts when this is the goal and the purpose of community. They're missing something that they're longing for. Shit that all us longing for. The difference is until they get tainted from having their offering stone back in their face, they're going to keep giving and keep giving and keep giving and keep giving. And without the gifts that the people bring, the community will die. And without the community, the individual, the people will not feel affirmed. They're not going to feel listened to, not going to feel like they have nowhere to belong or to be appreciated. All of this is important when it comes to development, y'all. And when it comes to development, we've been winging it. We've been winging it. And then our winging it, our psyche's been disempowered, right? Because when you ain't been affirmed, you ain't got nobody believing you, you ain't got nobody to listen to you, ain't got no safe space where you can go, where you can belong, where it's okay to be there. What happens to your mind? Hey. And when it's been like that for generations and generations and generations, what happens to the collective psyche of all of us who have been affected? That's what we got to really be conscientious and thoughtful of. What happens to our collective psyche? You know, and we can't afford to be disempowered anymore. You know, we got people that have wonderful contributions that have been holding back their gifts because they don't have nowhere to be able to share it and be affirmed. Where somebody ain't gonna take that shit and judge it and decide they want to roast it or exploit it. So many times the communities that we decide to take our offerings and our gifts to see them as a means to profiteer and start trying to pimp us. And that shit happens when we are in our youth and our adolescence. Our kids know this pain so well. We as adults know this pain so well that we have harbored and held on to from our childhoods that we ain't never figured out how to heal. All we did was figure out how to be guarded with each other because we know y'all still out here. But that goes back to the element. Because when you have practiced engaging your spirit in such a way that your spirit can do the revealing for you of what it is that is before you, you ain't got to think about that shit. We be trying to do a lot of things ourselves that we ain't got to do. All we got to do is put the invitation out there and let the answer come forward to us. That go back to subjection and submission. Subjection and submission. Do we trust the spirit that when we put a call out, it's going to answer? And that it'll do it expeditiously. We got to believe that, you know. We got to believe that we are empowered, whether or not somebody affirms us or not, too. You know, but community is so vital for all of us. Everybody needs somewhere or somebody they can call or go to, you know. When we don't have a place to give our gifts, our creativity is stifled. And what I'm going to say is our creativity is so important that we need to be able to express that on a regular and a consistent basis, because without it, without us being able to tap into that part of our brain, we experience mental, spiritual, emotional blockages. And when we get blocked, y'all, we start shutting down. And we start talking about depression. And we have a vivid experience of that in our community. But all of it is back related to us not having a community. Without a community, we don't have a place to be seen, because that's what it provides us. It provides us a home. It provides us a place to belong. Home is supposed to always be the place where you can go and not have no worries. You should always be able to have your people that you can be amongst and have no worries. And if we don't have that, then I implore us that we gotta actually start creating and seeking a more intentional community. We do. One that we can be accountable to, that we know what our responsibilities are and where they rest and they lie in that arena. You know, because our relationships are not private. Ours is not limited to two. We start talking about community and we start thinking about the role of community in relationships. You know, it helps us be accountable to what we're doing and the purpose that we claim that we have set forth to come together to execute, right? Because the spirit is in the center of it, then all of our connections are divine. But in the absence of community, two people are forced to hold everything between themselves. You know, and when we approach romantic relationships, we do privatize them. We don't want nobody in our business. We don't want nobody in our business. We don't want nobody asking too many questions. We don't want nobody going out and talking about too much. We usually ain't talking about too much. We privatize our relationships, not necessarily because we are ashamed in any way, but oftentimes we have put that relationship, because we spent so much time in it, on a pedestal, and we look for in it things that we should be getting in a variety of places within our community, right? And I say this because a lot of times we get in romantic relationships, and you ever had a friend that get with somebody and then you don't hear from them no more? You don't talk to them no more, like they didn't went completely off the grid? Yeah, hell no, it ain't supposed to be like that. Your romantic partner is never supposed to be everything to you. In fact, that's an unfair request to make. It ain't even possible for them to do that for you. Nor should you expect them to try. You know, the problem is that we put these expectations on people and then they can't fulfill them, and then they feel like they've been a failure in a relationship. Then their psyche is affected by that, by them feeling like a failure or feeling inadequate. When in reality, what you were trying to provide was too big of a burden, and it wasn't your responsibility in the first place. You know, no one relationship should be responsible for satisfying the needs of what a community of relationships should provide. When we do that, When we get with folk and we do that, we don't leave room for no support. We don't leave room for no friends to come in. We don't leave room for nobody to help us. Because not only are we everything to each other, but we're everything to each other and we got everything with each other. I don't know that that's healthy, but that's what we do in the Western world. That's what we do. And not only do we do that, but we leave spirit out of our relationships. We'll meet somebody in the song. We already got it figured out. Whatever we gonna do with them, we done drove that train and we done figured out where the track in that baby, and we done took our ticket and got on. Okay, I'ma drive this hoe. I know what I'm doing. I know where I'm going. But being mindful that spirit has the ability to be able to see things that we cannot see and be places that we cannot. Okay, to move cross dimensionally, to see past, present, and future, this dimension and outside. Okay, let it help. Even if you feel like you know what it is you're doing, because you very well may. I ain't taking that away from nobody. All I'm saying is we are edified by including and adding and requesting that the spirit come in on our behalf. It can't hurt us. But what can hurt is trying to manage a relationship with no support, without having a safe space to be able to engage in rituals or even to be able to process stuff that's happening with your partner. For real, a lot of times we be going to stuff in relationships and we don't even know who we can trust, who we can talk to. This also is not me advocating for you to go and tell your business to every Tom, Dick, and Harry that's out there who got questions and want your tea. Okay? I ain't telling you to do that either. In fact, I think you should. This go back to discernment. It go back to discernment. A community is vital for us to be able to stay balanced and to be able to resource our needs. Therapy is good, but it don't compensate for a community. A friend or two is cool, but you shouldn't be calling on one friend for all your different varieties of problems. Better know your friends. Better know who you can and can't talk to. You better know who you gonna talk to, who finna go call and talk to somebody else. Better know who you can call that can actually provide you with some help, or who is who can't do nothing but get in your way. You better know it, and you better have discerned it before you pick up the phone and you start calling. Because everybody who show up and say that they want to help you is not there to provide help. Some people are there to provide a variety of things. Hell, half the time we don't even be knowing it, what they really there for. But we got to be in relationship with people in such a way that we can see them for who they are and accept them for that. If we're going to be in relationship, you're good, you're bad, you're ugly, all that. All that. Because the other thing I don't need to do is to get in a relationship with you and then to try to change you or to make you acquiesce to me in some shape, form, or fashion. If I feel like I need you to do that, then I really shouldn't have decided to be or chosen to be in a relationship with you. It's not going to serve me. Because now I got a project. I ain't got a partner. I got a project. I got some shit that I got to make happen out of you before I can even be with you. And all that's going to do is cause anger and resentment down the road from the waste of time and energy. And maybe not necessarily waste of time and energy, but yes, the time period that it took for me to help get you here, as opposed to if you had already came ready made. Or if you had come in a different state that we would be able to grow together in differently. Yeah. Yeah. And I'm gonna say this is women who be doing this shit more than men, although I do know some brothers with money who don't mind taking on projects, like I said. But in the end, it don't work out for nobody because of how it was approached. But all of this can be mitigated and settled by making sure that there is a place for your people and community to also have a place in your relationship when it comes to maintenance and resolution. Keeping everything private, the Dagara belief kills a relationship. because most of the time our crises are not complicated and we make problems bigger than what they actually are. We make them bigger by holding them to ourselves and trying to figure it out alone. But when we make space for us to figure it out as a group, then it becomes that much easier as a group. But when we leave spirit out and people think they're in control, then we struggle. The other thing is that our children grow up thinking that the only people in their community is their mama and their daddy. And parents alone are responsible for who our children become. We think that over here in the Western world. We think that the privatization of our relationships is appropriate. We think that isolating our families so that they can have or do or whatever rationale that is helpful, when all it does is breed more isolation. You know, when couples have children without having a village, they don't have time to work their problems out. And we see this so much when we look at marriages that didn't work, divorce rates that continue to go up. When you ain't got no community, you ain't got no help. How you gonna get help with your kids? You ain't got nobody to call. How you gonna call somebody you ain't got no trust with? Especially when we talk about kids, because our kids are too precious to be gambling with. Let me say that again. Our kids are too precious to be gambling with. We cannot leave our kids in the hands of folks that we cannot wholeheartedly trust with our lives. We cannot be putting our kids in places and spaces around folks that we can't trust to feed their mind and to build them up in ways that we would as their parents. We actually need to be mindful if we as parents don't want our kids or don't want our kids around or find ourselves irritated or perturbed by their presence. It means as parents, we got to start seeking help so that the community can come and aid us to get what we need, especially new moms. Postpartum is so real, and I see it happen so often where new moms are going through postpartum and the baby daddy ain't acting right or ain't around and they ain't got no help, but literally finna lose their mind of no fault of their own. And they need help with them babies. Just enough time to be able to get back to themselves, to be able to get what they need and to process their reality and experience. Y'all, it is so important for us to hold space for each other. You know, our children should not grow up believing that they ain't got folk that can be there for them. And if we as parents have not sought out a chosen community that can show up and stand in the gap, then we got work to do. We got stuff that we got to go back and we got to check into feeling and making sure it's available for our kids, and to make sure that we got the resources that we need to maintain our relationships and partnerships, right? Because when you gotta be so wrapped up in taking care of your kids and making sure you get money and your survivalist needs are met, and you don't have time to work out your personal problems, by the time you finally find time, it's too late. And we are not in a position where we can afford to lose more households and more families that include the nurturing of multiple parents. If anything, we got to be figuring out how we can multiply and compound the households that we got that got multiple parents. And when I say multiple, I ain't limiting that to two. Okay? We talk about polygamy a lot, and like it's becoming a pop culture thing. Polygamy is becoming a pop culture thing. I want to say that, but we got to start talking about how to expand our households, right? So where our kids have more parents, our households have more money, our institutions have greater power. All of this goes back to our conversation yesterday about building institutions of power and making sure that they can produce for us more power, resources, needs, assets for our people and for what it is that we're trying to do out here. So the question is, how do we build genuine community? And that is directly connected and related to the ways that we engage one another. You know, it's up to us to figure out how we provide networks of continuous and genuine support. So part of that is using small groups to reach common goals. Finding communal spaces that can establish common goals. Churches would be a community space that would meet this if they had a vehicle to empower individuals through understanding where their spirit is already within them. And you got some that do, but they so far and few between theologically. It's important for us to have a theology of liberation, and not only regular liberation, but a theology of Black liberation around how to move and how to be within ourselves and our relationships and our community, and within the greater context of what we create outside of our communities, right? That's up to us. And we have to set those parameters and put those parameters in place. But we've got to have spiritual centers where we can engage in ritual and where we can edify our spirits and give them room to do the healing and growing and developing that they need to. And a large part of this is allowing our spirit to be the guide, allowing spirit to be the base and the foundation of what we stand on in all of our endeavors. And until we start there, we can't do nothing else. And I hope I don't sound too Christocentric when I talk about basing what we do in the nature of spirit. But we spirit, y'all. We are human and divine at the same time. It's up to us to acknowledge that and to figure out how we're going to live into that, right? Because if we're not moving in spirit, then we're moving in ego and in control. And we know that that's not going to produce more togetherness for us. And so, as we allow spirit to be the base and the guide for community, we also acknowledge that everything that we have belongs to everybody. That's another thing we can start doing now, is stop privatizing and individualizing these things that we are growing and building and amassing. Me, I, mine. Nah, man, ours. This for us. This for everybody. If I got it, you got it. If I'm going, you going, bro. Like we got to get to a place where we look out for one another and our communal well-being needs and resources. So we got to stop the privatization. There's more than enough to go around. Always have been, always will be. It's just a matter of how we approach it. And if we're in competition with each other about who can have the most and who can do the most and all of these things, that's not going to facilitate a yield to us showing up for each other. And we are called more than ever now to stand in the gap and show up for each other. And the more we do that, the more we stand up and help, the easier it will be for us to build trust. We got to start intentionally building trust with one another. And that means being real. Nobody can embarrass me or lie to or shame me or make me feel bad about my truth and my story. It is what it is, and it is mine. It's mine. I'm required to be honest and genuine when I come to the table, so that the interactions and engagements that I'm building are facilitating what I want to see. They really are producing positivity. They really are translating into a better knowledge of my people and how we work together and what we can do collectively. But if I can't trust you, I ain't doing shit with you. Nothing. And we just got to be real about that. We got to stop posturing and capping and trying to be politically respectable. We got to go outside and get to know each other. We got to talk to our neighbors. We don't even know people. We don't know people's names. We don't know their family or their people or where they come from or what they do or what they do. We don't be knowing nothing because we're so individualized and privatized. Talk to the people that's around you. Get to know them. And nurture so many small relationships that one day community can actually happen. When we start nurturing a bunch of little relationships and then start bringing those relationships into community with each other, we are lessening the degrees of separation. The more we learn people's stories and start hearing about who they are and where they come from and their people and what their people did and how all these things fit together, the more we build the infrastructure, a web where we are interconnected. And that's a bond that it's going to be hard to be broke once it actually gets solidified. But we the ones we've been waiting on to do that, And so these are everyday things that we do in and out, or that we can do in and out to help continually facilitate our ability to grow together, to build together, to learn together, and we got to figure out more and more ways to do that. We also got to figure out ways to talk to each other and not talk at each other or past each other. Gender roles, they say, plays a big part in our ability to be able to have these conversations and move in these ways because they help facilitate balance. A woman should not expect her man to take the place and love of her women friends. And a man should not expect his woman to take the place and love of his homeboys because it's just going to be different. It's going to be different. It's going to feel different. It's going to all of that. But it doesn't mean that you're not supposed to have it because both of you going to need it in order to live out the way you need to engage the other. When we're not balanced, when we don't have what we need, when we're not moving as whole creatures, we struggle with other people. And not only do we struggle with other people, but a lot of times we really struggle with our person. Because we be around them the most and see and engage them more than anything. But it's important for us to stay balanced, acknowledging that we are both masculine and feminine. Whether you're a man or a woman, you have both energies in your body. And we have reduced sexuality and sexual nature down to what is your gender and what is your sex, and treating it like that is the only thing that it is. And to be quite frank with you, our sexual nature is much more than our genitalia. It is much more than us defining minimally. But it really requires that we are in balance within ourselves in these bodies, so that we deal with each other appropriately. We got to reawaken the part of ourselves that's connected to the emotion of the other side, right? So in the book, she talks about how the men every year go back to the place that they completed their initiation, and they do an exercise very similar to mothering each other as men. And they go and they release their emotions, and they kind of it's like a powwow almost, where they go and they spill and they get everything out. And whatever emotions come as a product of that, they allow them to flow. So if there's crying, they are allowed to cry. If there is anger and screaming, they are allowed to do that. If they need to release energy and move, they are allowed. But it is their brothers who mother and nurture them and who hold them in their bosoms and coddle and restore the energy that gets released in that. In the same way, she talks about the women and how they have their ritual where they take on the masculine energy and basically act out their rage as aggressively as possible. How sometimes they also go hunting. But in the ritual where they dress up like men to release their masculine energy, for them, that is their team camaraderie of release, right? So I'm going to support you in helping you to process. And that's what's happening on both sides. But it's your gender group that's helping keep you in harmonic balance with both energies in your body. It's not the other gender. It's not your woman's job to mother you. through these emotions. It's not your man's job to coach you through these emotions. It's your fellow sister's job to help you that, and it's your fellow brother's job to help you with that. So there's a different accountability that comes in with how your gender peer group is supposed to help nurture your development that then later aids you in relationship with your partner. Now, when we start talking about purpose, you know, each group got to work with their own gender group, because that group has to identify and define within themselves what their energy is going to be like. It is not for a man to define what the feminine energy of a woman should be like. It is for the women to decide collectively, not only what that energy will be like, but also how to process and facilitate moving into that energy, right? So what's our process, and how do we help nurture one another in this identity that we have set for ourselves, and vice versa with the men? Men have to decide what is going to be their collective identity in masculinity. Now, right now, granted, we got some real fragile definitions that we've been abiding by. Okay, we ain't really figured out how to define masculinity in a way that is not toxic or fragile. But the figuring out of that is going to require men coming together and agreeing. It's not the women's job to come and dictate any of that. And when we begin to allow each of our genders to go into the respective corners and do the necessary respective work for mutual respect to be gained for the other side around the mysteries that exist within the genders, we're going to struggle. Sexism is not encouraged. Equality is not encouraged, right? Because men and women are not equal. They're complementary. And when we recognize that, we're going to approach our relationship so different. But there has to be an extreme appreciation for one for the other. Otherwise, we're going to mistreat each other every time. And that's been what our experience has been, playing these blame games around our condition and whose fault it is and how we got here, instead of finding prescriptive remedies for how we move beyond this place. And what Sobonfu offers us is that ritual is a way to be able to move beyond where we are in this regard, because of what ritual provides. A ritual is when we call in the spirit to be the driver and overseer of our activities. The role of ritual is to keep peace, to ground ourselves, and to create better communication. Right? So if that's the role and the purpose of what it is that happens, then every time we invite ritual, I mean, every time that we go into ritual and we invite the spirit in, we're doing something, or we're creating space for something to be done with and through us that we actually can't do in and of ourselves. We're inviting a miracle. We're inviting something supernatural. We're inviting something that is bigger than us to be upon us. And that is a conscious choice. You know, our children have to be witnesses to this, to grow in an understanding of what it means to have this experience, but also to be able to our kids are such a gift, y'all. But they're so pure. They're so pure and loving and open-hearted, and what they bring to us is a sincerity that helps fill the voids that we bring as adults, right? So the things that we have brought with us from childhood into adulthood that we have yet to go into to heal in a holistic and a wholehearted way. When we invite children to be a part of rituals, whether they just call in names or they lead in a procession, whatever part they have, the energetic sincerity that they come with in their spirit fills the void by itself. It is. We don't give them enough credit for the power that comes in their being, because we feel like we are the ones who are responsible for making them whatever they're going to be, forgetting that they come with a blank slate and an intuitive faculty already within their spirit. We don't give them that. It's theirs. What we do is program them. We program them, and that's it. But they don't belong to us. They're not ours. They've been entrusted to us. They've been entrusted to us to help develop them into the understanding of their soul's purpose and what it is that they came here to do, what lessons they came here to learn. That's it. And we be trying to take ownership of them and possess them like they're little slaves. Don't do that, master. We already know what problems we got with that. We cannot perpetuate them against our own seeds. But yeah, invite the babies. The babies actually have to be a part of it. Emotions have to be a part of it, right? If you don't have a safe space in your ritual to be able to express your emotion, there will never be any other safer space, right? Especially when we talk about community and the importance of that community being a facilitator of your growth and development by purpose, right? So that means in your rituals, we have to be able to release. Otherwise, we're carrying back with us the very thing that we're here to accomplish. We can't do that, you know? And so our energies are required to be released from us so that they don't fill us up in ways that overtake us, where that energy becomes ruling. Now, see, I'm talking to y'all, and the Google just started talking, and I wasn't even talking to them today. Now, like I was saying, also, y'all, all the devices in your house, they always listening. The Googles, the TVs, the Alexas, okay? I'm a bad example. I really got to get them out of my house, but convenience, right? Because we're not going to be able to get away from technology either. We're going further into it. But yeah, back to emotions and ritual and energy. We have to release the energy that we have in us, especially if it's not positive, so that it does not overtake us and become the ruler of our choices and decisions. Every emotion that we have is meant to be understood, and it is meant to have the space to be understood, which means that we also have to spend time with it so that we can get to know it, is essence and nature and how it came to be a part of us. And that goes back into the reprogramming of our subconscious and our psyche that we talked about yesterday. But in the same way that the men express and experience their emotions when they go back to the place where they experience their initiation, and they do their mothering of one another as their emotions come out, and the women do the same when they are amongst each other doing their rituals. We have to create rituals in our lives and in our own personal spaces and ways of being and dealing that allow us to release in the same ways, that not only allow us to release, but to also be nurtured in community and loved on and affirmed by our people in the midst of that. That helps pour back into us that which we've poured out, right? And to also allow that which is poured back in to be something so vastly different and empowering that it transforms us. Now, initiation has been mentioned, but it is precluded by an understanding of purpose. The rituals that we engage in are precluded by purpose too. Initiation are experiences that help prepare us for the phase of life that we are preparing to move into. Rituals are a large part of that. But all of this helps us to connect with ourselves, with our community, and with the natural forces that exist around us. People in the village love the rituals. In the same way that we would also say that Black people love going to church on Sunday morning and being in the emotion of what is produced in that spiritual space. there's an energetic high that we as people are used to tapping into, especially Black folk. Black folk, we used to tapping into this. And in the village, she talks about how the work of the spirit is so vital to the people that whenever the high start wearing down, or whenever they can't feel the strength of the energy, like resting or sitting, then they're going back into ritual again in order to recreate, to reinvigorate, to raise that energy back up again, you know. But you don't do rituals just to do them. It must be done with a very specific purpose, with a named intent, and there must be something to solve, you know. And there are also different types of rituals that she goes into, you know. Initiation is a type of ritual. You also have maintenance rituals. You have radical rituals, which are rituals when you need to cleanse or to clear something out, usually a negative or a bad spirit that is permeating a place. Um, and then she goes into how to, you know, prepare your space for that and what to expect, and the beauty of what comes out of the experience of being in ritual, right? Like it's an experience that you got to have. It's not something that you can actually talk about from witnessing somebody else. In Christianity, they talk about it, a conversion of heart, right? When I was in the Methodist church, they used to talk about, John Wesley talked about being strangely warmed inside. But you have to have the experience of engaging the spirit in ways that you understand what it means to have communed. Without that, it is going to be hard to understand what to expect, how to engage, or to receive other people when they talk to you about what their experience has been when they have been in the spirit. Now, we almost finished. Like I said, initiation is it is precluded by understanding of purpose. And initiation is a ritual. All of our rituals have a purpose and a meaning. And so when we think about what purpose is, it's the reason why we do something. It is the intended or the desired result, aim or goal. You know, like it's the cause. It's the cause and the effect. And so when we look that all of this is about development, all of this is about expansion, all of it is about our growth. The more we understand about ourselves and our nature and the ways that we are, the easier it is for us to live into that. And those things are best facilitated by community. And that's our struggle. If you don't understand anything else about this book that I would like to illuminate about the crisis that we have in relationships, is that our relationships are individualized, privatized, and we do not have a collective community that we can be accountable and responsible to as it relates to our culture, our ways of everyday living and engagement. Primary reason. And until we facilitate that, we're going to struggle. When they talk about initiations and rituals, one of the first rituals that happens is of a baby. Before the baby even is born, they do a listening ritual with the mother where they talk to the baby. They get down on the mama's stomach and they start talking to the baby and they ask the baby, who are you? What are you coming here for? What is your purpose? So that the mother has an understanding of what it is that child is supposed to be here to do in the spirit, so that they can nurture and help develop that purpose, right? So in this ritual, the baby, the unborn baby's voice takes over the facilitator's voice and answers the question and tells the mother exactly what they're there for, exactly what the purpose is, exactly what they came to do. And now the mother is empowered to make sure that that child has exactly what they need in order to grow and to develop into that purpose, because that purpose is going to bless the village. Everything is interconnected. But when we don't have this community and we are living in a vacuum of trying to figure out what it is I'm here for, what I'm here to do, how am I supposed to be able to live this out? And we don't have the community infrastructure to facilitate this growth and development. We've got to come back and revisit what culture we are actually promoting and creating. Eurocentricity is not going to serve us. It has not, regardless of how much we yield to it. And so there's also, they got another book. So The Spirit of Intimacy is by Sobonfu Somé, but her husband Malidoma wrote a book called Ritual, where all he talks about are the rituals that continue to facilitate and lead us into healing and regeneration, right? Because sometimes you got things that can be healed, and sometimes you got things that must be disintegrated and regenerated, meaning that ain't no healing for it. Destroy, burn that bitch down, let it completely go, and let it come back together in its own way, shape, form, or time. Some things cannot be restored. Some things are not meant to be. We got to be okay when we come into contact with those things, because if we've invited the spirit in, it's going to reveal to us, hey, it's time to let that shit go. Ain't no more space for that. You have evolved beyond this. You have evolved beyond this. And in acknowledging your evolution, there's more. And what I appreciate about the spirit is there is always more. We are the ones who are required to believe that. And when we put limitations on ourselves, we also put limitations on what the spirit can witness to us or do through us. The witness of the spirit don't always come through us either. A lot of times the spirit showcases itself in all things that are alive. And we talked about spirit and spirit and all of its existences and what it means and where it is and how we tap in. But we got to create space for the spirit to witness to us. And whatever our beliefs are will facilitate what that witness can be, right? Polar Express, they asked the question, is seeing believing or is seeing believing? You can see it in your mind's eye first, and you believe that it's possible. Eventually, then you will see it in front of you. You got to see it in front of you first before you believe it up here, then you're working ass backwards, as my mama would say. Because if it's already in front of you, then that means somebody's mind already created it. So we talking about the past tense, if it's already in front of you. But the essence of what is provided to us when we are moving in a spiritual nature is our ability to be creators who are infinitely creating at all times. Because we got the consciousness to know the tenets of how to do it. So that means we use those faculties in a more intentional way, hopefully. Because what I learned is knowing better is not always doing better. But that's what we're responsible for. And so I think I want to stop here tonight so that tomorrow we can start clear on initiation, because I think there is a depth that we need to go into that. I think my little 2.5 hours has expired tonight. I forgot about the Super Bowl, y'all. I'm so sorry. Oh, yes. Also, Water in the Spirit is definitely another great book by Malidoma Somé, which is Sobonfu's husband. And tomorrow we're actually going to talk a little bit more about their union and their relationship, their experience with initiation, what that initiation produced for them, but also their arranged marriage and the purpose behind that and what actually has been produced in it, right? So a lot of times we hear about arranged marriages and we have a lot of different thoughts about them, but not only were they together, but they did a lot of great things together. And rest in peace, Malidoma. He just recently transitioned. But my hope in not only having this class, but also others, is that we keep the spirit alive by listening to the words and the wisdom of what our ancestors have shared with us and what they have provided and offered as prescriptions for being able to transform our conditions. It don't serve nobody to do all this work and to offer these gifts only for us to throw them back on their faces. So I refuse, and am committed to making sure that we continue to do the work. And so I appreciate y'all for being here with me on tonight. Tomorrow is our last night. Somebody told me, it was like, you can't have no Valentine. You're going to do this class on Valentine's Day. I ain't watched Super Bowl, y'all. I didn't realize it was Super Bowl Sunday. I created a lot of competition for myself. But what I know and I am committed to is to continue to come back and to do these studies, so that we can continue to dive deeper into engage on a soul level, on a soul, on a subconscious, on a molecular level, in ways that our essence can be different. We can feel that and nurture it amongst one another. I also hope that you on here and you on here with your people, like I said, share this with somebody. Let the people know that this is available. Create discourse around it, because these are conversations that we need to be having. We have made so many things about romance and dating, and relationships, that we oftentimes forget about the rest of the relationships that we have with everybody else, and how to cultivate and facilitate and strengthen those and the purpose that they have in our lives. And so I just want to continue to encourage us to go there. And if you have not subscribed at thealternativetribe.com, I encourage you to do that. I encourage you to make sure that you are following us on all of our many pages: Facebook, Instagram. We don't have an Alternative Tribe Twitter, but you can follow your spiritual plug on there at class KLASS_sick. And you can also make sure to tap into the Alternative Tribe events. Feel free to what's the word? Donate. Feel free to make a purchase, because all the proceeds that you see on there go to supporting our programming that we do with our young people in community, as well as mutual aid that we provide folk who come and who need stuff. Our goal, again, as a organization, is to provide safe space for Black, Indigenous, and people of color seeking to engage in personal growth, development, cultural development, and community support. That's what we do. And me, your spiritual plug, I'm here. And like I told y'all, my purpose is to help you transform, to prick your consciousness, to provoke your thoughts, and to reflect your own shadows back to you in such ways that you might be able to navigate them and this life a little more empowered. So thank you for being with us. Me, I'll be saying us like it's a whole gang of us back here. But thank you for being with me on tonight. And I will see y'all again on tomorrow night. All right. Y'all have a good evening. I love y'all.